caddis larva. Each fly will be preceded by a panel that lists the materials you'll need for the fly.
Now, the life cycle of a caddis, compared to the life cycle of a mayfly, has one real basic difference, and that is that there are 4 stages as compared to 3. Now, we're going to begin this series with an example of what is known as a case caddis. In other words, it's the larva in its underwater stage that it builds a case, a protected case in which it spends its time when it lives underwater. Again, the majority of its life is spent underwater. And we'll start tying the fly by tying a little bit of copper wire. We're going to use that barb of the hook as the back reference to begin the fly. We're going to use turkey tail fiber for the case portion of this fly. And we'll trim the end here so that the tips are even. We'll tie that in the same position that we tied the wire rib. Lock it in, good and firm. Now for this fly we're going to need to build a cone-shaped underbody to give us the correct appearance of the case. We're going to want to make this fairly thin, so we use some of this fine dubbing that is quite close to the same color as the turkey fiber. We'll just begin working our way forward, dubbing all the time. The rule on this is going to be about 50%. I'm going to pull a little of this dubbing off. We got a little bit more than we need. Doesn't represent a problem. You see we're tapering that from very slender to fairly chunky right in the front. We're going to allow approximately 50% of the hook to remain. Now as we bring this fiber over, begin wrapping it forward. Get the wraps fairly tight. Press up the shank of the hook. It's like a nice conical shape here. Tie the butts off, secure them in place. Trim away the waist. Then we'll come back, pick up the good copper wire, and with open turns we'll begin to spiral the wire forward. This is a reinforcement factor. The hurl actually could be a little bit fragile and come apart if we don't do this. Also adds a little bit of flash. Tie it off at the forward part of the case. Get that out of the way. There's the rear. Trim that off. Okay, the next part of the fly is the color of the abdomen of the caddis larva, which lives inside this protective case. In this instance, we're going to use a nice bright green. It's a very common color of many caddis larvae. Dub that onto the thread. We're going to make a nice little band of this bright green dubbing. It's a nice soft, quite easy to work with. Now this is, what we're duplicating here is the larva is partially exposed from the case. And as I said, this bright green represents the color of the abdomen of the larva. We're going to use a little bit of the CDC. This is black, and what we want to do is produce the effective legs in the proper area, which is forward of the the larva portion. Trim that to length. Now we've got the butts facing forward here, and we've got about a half a dozen or so fibers in here. We'll extend those facing out over the eye of the hook, lock them into place. We can allow ourselves plenty of working room here too. We can trim these to length later. Okay, we're going to leave a little bit of space for the head and for the thorax portion of the fly. We're going to divide these black CDC fibers, approximately equal on both sides of the hook. Extend them down along the sides. And move our thread back to the right up against that little green band of dubbing. All right, now that we have these CDC fibers that we're using to represent the legs in place, we'll take a little bit of this nice coarse virgin dubbing. It's quite a bit darker than the abdominal portion of the fly, but that's the way it is in the natural. So we'll work right up against the little green band of dubbing and begin to form a nice thorax just in front of the abdomen. A little bit of figurating here with the dubbing so that we can enclose those legs. Help to hold those into position. Always remember work counterclockwise with the dubbing. Okay. Just forming. Let's get a little bit thicker right here in the head than back in the abdomen. Okay, once we've got that necessary shape that we want, everything's covered, tied down, with a little manicuring here. Pick up the whip finish. 3 or 4 turns. Snip it off. We will do just a little bit of trim here. Now we can come over and trim our legs. We want about 50% of the length of the body as a reference for our legs, the length of our legs. And a little bit long. The layered fiber there. Fiber there. Get that just about right. Okay. Apply a little head cement. Clear the eye. There we have our case caddis.
The next fly, a CDC biot caddis pupa.
As a caddis larva nears emergence, it changes into the next stage. The next stage is a pupa. Now we'll go through our usual procedure of covering the hook shank with a tying thread for our foundation. Press back to the barb of the hook. Now this is a turkey biot, and it's very similar to a goose biot, only it's longer, it's a little softer. This is dyed to approximately the same color that we used in the abdomen of the caddis larva. Once again, we want this to be a smooth body, so we're going to remember to face that little notch at the base of the biot to the left. If we face it to the right, it's going to be fuzzy. If we face it to the left, it's going to be smooth. Okay, we tie that in right above the barb of the hook. Anchor it in good and firmly. Now again, another difference between the turkey biot and the goose biot, we were using the turkey biot, remember, is that it has a bit of a transparent characteristic. So we're going to use just a little bit of this nice fine dubbing and create the the shape of the abdomen as an underbody here. After we've done this, we'll wrap that biot over the top of it. This doesn't have to be very, very thick. In fact, we want it to be fairly thin. Wrap it smoothly, progressing forward all the time, keeping it smooth. Go to a point just about midway on the hook shank. Okay, now we can come back, pick up our biot, attach these hackle pliers. We'll begin wrapping forward over the underbody. Again, we want to overlap each wrap. You can see we get a nice segmented effect, very, very lifelike. Color intensity of this biot is a very important factor, I think, or feature in using biot, and it doesn't change when it's wet. And these many times, and particularly these bright green caddis show a very, very strong color intensity during emergence, and that's what we're able to retain by using this biot for the abdomen. Now we're going to add the legs. And for the legs, we're going to go to some turkey hackle. We're going to want to select about maybe 6 or 8 fibers. I want to treat these kind of like a soft hackle. In other words, we want it to be fairly long. We want these legs to give us to contribute to the action of the fly. The reference for the length of the legs should be the length of the abdomen. In other words, lay the legs, turkey hackle on top of the hook, even the tips with the back of the abdomen, and then secure in place. So we've got that locked in. We'll just begin turning the thread, moving those legs around the hook shank, much like spinning deer hair, bring it back to the front of the abdomen. Okay, turn away the waist. Now for the legs, we're going to want to put a little bit of a CDC wing. Actually, it's a wing case, but it's going to be accomplished very easily. Select a couple of nice gray CDC feathers. Line the tips. Pull the excess glue back. Stroke all the fibers together into a nice square tip. The wing should be very short. It should only extend about midway back on the abdomen. Once we've got that measured, do a soft loop, lock the CDC wing in place. Cut one of my legs in there. Make sure it's firmly anchored. Spread that fiber a little bit. Turn the CDC away. Get everything pointing in the right direction. We got those legs pointing back. That's good. Fuss with that CDC just a little bit. Get it back up on top of the hook shank. Okay. Now when a caddis pupa swims toward the surface in the process of emergence, it's got a lot of motion. There's the legs, the antenna that's all writhing and moving, and the insect actually moves quite fast. I'm going to pick up a little bit of this turkey hackle again, pull 2 of them off, lay them over the top of the wing, even the tips. These will be our antenna. We want this to extend just slightly beyond the abdomen. So we'll lock those down right on top of the hook shank. Secure with a couple of good tight wraps. Turn the waist. Okay. Add a little drop of cement here at this tie down area. this is some of the same dubbing that we use for the head and thorax on the larva pattern. We're going to cover that tie-down area and form a nice distinct head on this fly. As we get it spun around the top of the thread, we begin forming the head of the fly. We just kind of want a ball shape right in here. Get that formed where we want. We're finished. Complete fly. Okay, manicuring there. Drop a head cement. We have a CDC biot, Caddis pupa. A little manicuring there.
A CDC transitional caddis is coming up next.
Caddis pupa, in transition to caddis adult, is probably one of the most important phases of the process of emergence from a fly fisherman's standpoint. I think this is the time when we're accustomed to seeing those real splashy rises on a trout stream. We see caddis about, and this fly helps to address that vulnerable time that's just prior to that the emergence of the fly above water. We begin again by covering our hook shank with tying thread. We're going to take a little bit of this bright green Caddis emerger dubbing. It's got some good sparkle to it. We'll tie that in, extending out beyond the bend of the hook. Tie it down to a point, extending out beyond, as I said, the bend of the hook, and we're using the hook point again as reference. Wrap forward just a little bit, stroke some of the fibers into position, come back over the top, lock this material into place. Manicure some of those errant fibers out. We want this to be approximately the same length as this line, perhaps just a little bit shorter. Okay. Next we're going to tie in a little bit of fine gold wire. Tie that in just the point where this little tuft of dubbing leaves the hook. And we're going to again take some of the same material that we used for that little tuft, the tail. This color represents the pupal color, and part of this fly represents the pupa, part of it represents the emerging adult. We have to do a little bit of experimenting here to determine just the right amount of dubbing. There's a little trick here. For most of the other flies that we've been doing, we've been using what we call a pinch dub. This is a different method of dubbing that gives us a nice segmented effect. We anchor the tip of that down into the same tie-down area where the wire and the rib is, and we bring it around. What we've done is rolled this into kind of a dubbing noodle here. Now, twist it around the thread, form kind of a rope. Now, as we begin wrapping forward, we have to kind of roll our wrist a little bit as we come around, keeping the wraps very close together. We begin to progress forward. You can see that we're producing a nice segmented effect here. The tie-down area, wrap the thread around so that we can tie the forward portion of the abdomen off. slightly, close to the front of the abdomen. And cure a few of those errant fibers out. And then we come back through with gold wire. And we'll run that wire right in between these segments that are created by this little dubbing trick that we've used. And this is going to enhance the segmented effect as well as adding just a little bit more twinkle to the fly. Off. Free. Advance the thread out toward the eye just a little bit. Go back, pick up the turkey hackle. Use about 8 to 10 fibers on this turkey hackle. Keep the tips even. Oh, that nice. Just a shade. Okay, we use the back of the fly again as a reference for length of the legs. Tie the turkey hackle on top of the hook shank. Come around, allow the turkey hackle to begin to spin around the hook shank. And we'll progress to the rear. And we can produce fairly well distributed around the hook shank. Trim off the waist. Okay. Now, I'm going to pick up 2 nice gray dun-colored CDC feathers. Pair them so they flare away from each other. Pull the usable fiber into toward the tips. And bundle all the fibers together again. We want these to flare away from each other. The length of the wing is going to be just about the length of the legs, in other words, right to the back of the body. Hold those in position. Nice soft loop. Anchor them down. Okay. Trim away the excess. Okay, position those legs a little bit. Alright, again we're going to want to add a couple of these wood duck colored turkey fibers. We're going to lay those right over the top of the wing, extend out past the abdomen, anchor those in position. Take this and spread those fibers just a little bit. Okay. Tie down. Drop some into the tie down area just for a little added durability. Come back over, pick up some of this dark Caddis emerger dubbing. A little bit more. And we're going to cover the tie down area. Again, we're going to want it kind of a ball shaped thorax head area here. Twisting all the time, keep that dubbing tight. With the eye. Push that back out of the way a little bit so keep that eye clear. A few turns of whip finish. Thread. A little manicuring. Okay. We'll cement the head. Clear the eye. Knock some of those little fibers out of the way. Okay, now this is a fly that can be fished on the surface, beneath the surface, just in the film, dead drift with a little bit of action. We've got a good representation of a trailing pupil shuck as the insect makes its final change into the adult fly. Transitional caddis.
The CDC palmered caddis adult.
A freshly hatched caddis adult is very mobile, and most of us are accustomed to seeing these insects scooting around, skittering and fluttering across the surface of the water. And we're going to tie this palmered caddis adult in such a way that we can duplicate that behavior. Now I've covered the hook shank with thread, and you'll notice that I've brought the thread back to a point just behind the eye. We're going to use some hackle in this pattern, which is going to allow us to elevate the profile and the flotation of this fly. It's also going to allow us to imitate the behavior of that freshly hatched caddis adult. I'm tying that hackle in just slightly beyond the eye of the hook, and all I want to do is leave enough room there so that we can put the wing and the antenna, etc. on later. We're going to take a little bit of this fine natural dubbing. This is a nice olive color, which is appropriate. It's a little more subdued than the pupil color, but that's the way we see nature work when we move into these different stages. Okay, I'm going to work in reverse here. You'll see that rather than working from front to rear, I'm working from rear to front, I'm working to front to rear. And we're making a nice, robust caddisfly body here as we work toward the back of the fly. When we finish the body, we're going to let that thread hang right where it is. We're going to pick up this hackle with our hackle pliers. And we're going to move this hackle in a reverse palmer toward the rear of the fly. When we've reached the very back where our thread is hanging, take a couple of turns to secure that hackle tip in, and then we'll work the thread back through the hackle to reinforce and therefore add some durability to this fly. We've completed that. Set the hackle tip away. Clear an air and fiber out. Alright. I'm going to use a little bit of elk hair as an underwing. This will help us to brace the elevation of the overwing up a little bit and give us just a little bit more positive wing silhouette. And we're not going to use a lot of hair. Probably not more than a dozen hairs total. We want this to match the color of the natural wing, which is basically kind of a medium gray. Even the tips with a hair evener. Lay that just beyond the back of the hook. Secure it into place with 3 or 4 good tight turns. Tying thread, snip the waist. Bring that thread back it tight. I will select 2 nice gray CDC feathers. I'm going to flare them, arrange them so they flare away from each other. Pull the fibers into alignment, square everything up. We're going to set that right on top of the underwing, again about the same length, just beyond the back of the hook. Loose loop, secure Anchor it down with lots of good tight tension. 4 or 5 good turns. Okay, we're going to leave those butts untrimmed. Over, this is our turkey hackle. We're going to add, and this guy I guess can be optional. I don't think it's mandatory to add this, but I like to add just a little bit of extra movement to the fly, so we add these 2 turkey hackle fibers right on top of the overwing. A little more realism. Secure very firmly. We'll lift the butts of the CDC down. A few wraps there to brace that up. 4 or 5 turns of the whip finish. Tighten that down good. Come back around here. We don't have to trim this too tight. Just trim it off at a nice angle like that. This is a pretty familiar way of tying off a style of fly. The old elk-winged caddis is done the same way. Okay, we're going to manicure here just a little bit. Get those fibers looking good alignment there. Saturate this tie-down area with tying cement. Clear the eye. Palmered CDC Caddis adult.
The last fly, a CDC spent Caddis adult.
The caddis is a lot like the mayfly in that it finishes its life after it leaves the water. The insects mate, and then they return to the water to lay their eggs. Now we're going to tie a fly that imitates the equivalent of the mayfly spinner, and it's called a spent caddis. It's a very low-floating fly, and these flies occur on the water fairly heavily at times because they are helpless. Their lives are ending. So we'll go back to take the thread back, the barb of the hook, pick up just a little bit of this fine natural dubbing. This is olive. We're going to dub a very, very slender body moving forward as we go. We only want to go maybe halfway forward on the hook shank. We can trim that, smooth it out if we want. Okay, we're going to use an underwing on this fly too, just to add to the silhouette a little bit and provide a little bit of realism to it as well. Again, it's going to be very sparse. Maybe 8 or 10 hairs is all we're going to want to use here. Hair evener. Tap a few times, align the tips. And lay this atop the hook shank and extending just slightly beyond the bend of the hook. Anchor it down. Work back toward the dubbing area there. Trim off the butts. Okay, we can add just a little bit of cement right here. Now we're going to get about the same amount of dubbing. And cover the tie-down area. And we're not going to want it really cinched down here. We want that wing to remain fairly confined and not to flare. So we'll progress forward with our dubbing. Smoothly. Nice taper. We want this to add a little bit more dubbing. We want this to taper very, very gradually forward. This is a downwing fly, and by taking special care to keep from getting a lot of buildup of dubbing right here on the forward part of the body, we can eliminate causing that wing to flare up, and when we move to that point. Okay, you can see we've left just a little bit of space there for the wing tie-down area. All right, a couple of nice gray. These are natural gray or dun CDC feathers. We're going to arrange these rather than flaring away from each other. We want them to face the same direction, and that is that we want the concave side to be down. And we'll pull enough fibers in here to be the equivalent of about twice the length of the fly. Lay that over the top of the hook shank, back just a little bit longer than our underwing, just beyond the back of the fly, the end of the hook. Secure that very tightly. This is very important. This has to be secured very, very firmly. There's a few more turns here to make sure that that doesn't go anywhere. As you can see, we've got a nice flat wing profile here. Now, to increase the flotation and the realism of the fly, we're going to take the butts of the wing, pull them back to the rear, secure them along the side of the fly. And these are going to act as legs. Do on the same thing on the opposite side. Tie those down securely. Smooth that area out because we're going to cover that with dubbing here in just a little bit. Okay. Just a little drop of cement there. A tie down area. Now we're going to pick up some darker dubbing to imitate the thorax head area of the caddisfly. And this will be a very small amount. All we want to do is just cover that tie down area and suggest a head and a thorax on here. We're going to bring that dubbing back in behind these legs that we've tied in, which are the butts of the wing, of the figure 8. Bring those out at a little bit of an angle out toward the sides. And just a nice round shaped head. Okay. 3 or 4 terms of wood finish. We'll trim these butts of the CDC about 50% of the way back on the wing. That's what we have. Check that out. Make sure that there's nothing hanging down here. Just manicure it a little bit. Cement the head. Clear the eye. And spit and caddis a little.